Welcome back to Front Row Cinema, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers. I'm your host, Teacher Trimboli, and today we are talking Lilo and Stitch, the latest live action Disney film. Based on the 2002 animated original, Lilo and Stitch is a 2025 sci fi comedy directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, written by Chris Bright and Mike Van Ways, based on the original story by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, and starring Sydney Elizabeth, Zach Galifianakis, Billy Magnuson, and Chris Sanders as Stitch. Now, I saw this movie this past Memorial Day weekend, Thursday, May 22nd, for the early previews. I caught the earliest show about, I think it was like 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was packed already. I was like shocked. I didn't think there was really going to be anybody for this one. I thought I'd catch it before the big crowd started showing up, but I was wrong. 2:30 p.m. Thursday, people were there, people were hyped, and it played great in the theater. Kids loved it, parents laughed. I saw a lot of tears on both parents and kids leaving the theater. So this is an absolute slam dunk on Disney's part. And it shows. I mean, 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, not the greatest in the world, but it's certainly not horrible. But the big winner right there is the A Cinema Score. A Cinema Score is going to show that we're going to have some legs. This movie's going to do some business. And do some business it did this past weekend. Movie was budgeted at about $100 million, and it was an absolutely massive success over this Memorial Day holiday, scoring a record-breaking $182.6 million over the 4-day period, beating out the previous record holder of $160 million from Tom Cruise's Top Gun Maverick record. So an absolute all-around success there. Biggest Memorial Day weekend of all time. I think it was like $322 million around every movie and everything. So just an absolutely huge weekend, all led by this colossal movie. And we're gonna dive into some thoughts right now. But I think where I really want to start my review off for this movie is to say, for some people out there, because I've seen a lot of reviews, I've been reading a lot of things about this movie, and you know, like if we've learned anything through the podcast with Jim and me, is that people will never have sound takes. People will never allow anything to have a shade of nuance or a shade of gray. They must think in binary terms. It must always be black or white, and they must always compare things to the things that came before it. And to that I say, comparison is the thief of joy. If you go into this movie just looking for the ways in which it is not the original, you are going to be left unfulfilled. You are going to be left unhappy. This movie will not give you everything that you want from the original film, nor should it try. When you're trying to make a live action from the animated movie, you need to make these decisions to find the places to make these changes, because a one-to-one adaptation is never going to be the same. Same thing whenever you adapt a book to a movie or any type of piece of literature to a movie. You have to make concessions, you have to make changes, because what works in a book setting or what worked in an animated setting is not always going to work in a live action setting. Take 2019 Lion King, for example. The lifeless and expressionless look of all of the photorealistic animals did not lend itself to what made the animated so good. It's like these things are changes that you decisions you have to make that aren't always going to make. They're not always going to work together with one or another, but these are decisions that you have to decide on when you're making adaptations. Now, does this always work in favor, or does it always prove to be a net positive? No, not always, and that's something that we always have to consider when you're making these movies. But it's always something that I feel like you should go into a movie giving it as much of a chance as possible and expecting that it's going to be different from the other one, and at least take it at face value and try to give it on good terms. Because man, do I see this movie being unnecessarily derided on here for things that I actually think work better for a live action version of this than they do otherwise. And I think the big thing, the cat out of the bag, spoilers right out the gate, right from the end, is kind of how this movie ends. The second half of this movie is wildly different from the animated classic. Both a net positive and a net negative, because we talked about comparison being the thief of joy, but I will also extend that olive branch that it is a little questionable to me to cut out Captain Gantu. Not the biggest, doesn't kill this movie for me. Obviously, Captain Gantu was a thing that I really enjoyed from the original, but I'm not like, this movie sucks because he wasn't in it. I understand the need to change things, and maybe he doesn't work in this new edition that you're doing. Is that the greatest thing in the world? Who's to say? That's really a decision for each person to make. But I understand that we had to make these changes. But I actually really enjoyed the changes in the regards to their emotional journey together throughout this movie and where this movie ends up in regards to them. Because in an animated setting, it's easier to do it in the way in which they did. Like in the animated setting, Nani looks more like an adult in the animated setting. The way she's drawn and animated and everything, like I never for once in my head when watching the animated original put two and two together to be like, oh yeah, no, like that's just a kid herself trying to get by. Where they put a much better emphasis on this live action version in showing that Nani herself is also just a kid that's just been thrusted into this position and is just trying to scrape by, and she's struggling. She's working these dead end jobs, these day to day jobs, just trying to scrape by to make enough to keep them solvent for another day. So, like, they do a much better job, I feel like, in this one of really painting and showing the struggles that Nani is also going through in this movie. And at no point throughout any of this movie and where they end up do I think that they, like, ridicule or denigrate the meaning of Ohana whatsoever. I see a lot of people out there that are harping on this movie for like ruining the meaning of Ohana because the two of them don't like stay together and like physically stay together at the end of this movie, which to me seems like either like at worst really disingenuous, and like if I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, just seems kind of ignorant, because like it's also kind of like true to life. Like just because they're not in the same physical space at all time and she's not thrust upon to be this caregiver to this kid when she's a kid herself, like doesn't mean that they're not also still together. Like you even see it at the end of the movie. Like I feel like people are just glossing over the fact that she has a fucking portal ray gun that she can just use whenever she wants at school to pop over there and be with Lilo. Like they make a big point at the end of that movie of showing that even though she's gone off to college so that she can also get a degree so that she would be able to better take care of herself and in turn take care of her little sister. Like I don't know what part that ruins Ohana, but like that just seems absurd to me to think that just because like they made a decision at the end where Lilo also decided in there like the journey of this movie is these two girls learning to appreciate each other and let them go for what each one needs in life to better themselves in the future. Lilo understands that like Nani needs to also like figure her shit out and be a kid and like go towards what she wants because it will benefit them in the long haul. And Nani learns that she needs to let go of this like control that she thinks that she needs to have to keep this family together or else it's going to be lost, so that way like she can also still be a kid herself and discover the world around her. Like they, if anything, they just grow closer together in Ohana by that, because it's not like Lilo just gets like, they make it seem that like Lilo becomes a ward of the state of this movie when it's not. Like she literally lives next door with the woman that was like a pseudo parent to them for the majority of their life anyway. Like it's so insane the leaps and bounds that people are making on the internet to try and paint this movie as like an absolute like affront to the original because it just desecrates the meaning of Ohana, and I find that like absolutely hilarious. So I don't think that's the case whatsoever. The movie I think actually does very well in its changes to make it a more emotionally core story between the two sisters that I think actually works very well in the live setting, and I understand why it was changed. Stitch actually also looks great. I think they slam dunk on how they animated him. There really could have been a sonic catastrophe there, and thankfully that's not the case. Stitch looks great, retains a lot of his absurd personality and charm. He is just still just as lovable and chaotic and amazing as he always is. Another change that they made that I actually don't mind is making Jamba the mad scientist. I think one thing that does like kind of irk me is that like Zach Galifianakis doesn't really like embody like that boisterous like out of controlness of Jumbo. Like I think if anything they should have had him be like more menacing to actually be the overall villain of the story. He seems more like he's just kind of like a bumbling buffoon, which but also again a nitpick. We're doing a kids movie here. It's not like he's going to show up and start murdering people. Like he's going to be kind of a bumbling buffoon. So that doesn't bother me as much. But I like the idea of centering him as the villain and painting him as this mad scientist who's hell-bent on creating the perfect killing machine, but that killing machine is undone by the very thing that he has tried to root out of Stitch, which is like love and compassion, like these things that he's trying to like weed out of like a creature so that he can create this unstoppable machine. Like, and it doesn't matter like how well he does it, like compassion and love like wins out in the end. Like I think that's a good message, and I like it works again in the live action format. So that's another thing that I think people are like nitpicking. They'd be like, Jumbo wouldn't be a villain here, and it's like, hey, yeah, he kind of is. Like, I think you guys are glossing over the fact that he's like genetically engineering like monsters. Like it's okay to let him be the villain in this. Um, I think if the biggest thing that I can really point into the dislikes category for this movie, because like it's a fun, enjoyable kids movie, and again, like anything that I could say that is bad that it doesn't really work for me in the end, like for me, it doesn't really bother me or like in the long run because like this movie's not really for me. This movie is for kids, like, and it works as a kids movie. Like kids in this movie were loving this movie, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day. Like watching this movie, regardless of what I thought of it, I was like, the kids in this movie are loving it. This is a movie for them. Like they are going to grow up with this, and it's a worthy thing to have. Like people act like Lilo and Stitch was like the second coming of the greatest thing ever written when we were kids, and like that one's also just an enjoyable kids movie. Like it's all right for things to just be enjoyable for everybody. And I think the thing that makes this movie like not feel as like high up as it could be for me is the fact that it follows too closely to the original story for the first half of this movie. Like I had no problem with this movie taking as many liberties as it wants and really only keeping like some of the core characters like and principles, but like changing how we got there and the pathway that we do. That doesn't bother me whatsoever, and I think a lot of the stuff they do in the second half of this movie is really where I started to focus in and really enjoy this movie. And it was the first half of the movie where they just kept trying to be the original. That is where it faltered more for me, which is an interesting contrast for this movie to take. I think that was a super interesting part for me. The last thing I think I can say about this is it feels a little convoluted. This goes along with the idea that we're going to put Lilo in the care of the neighbor who's been like a parent to them throughout this movie. So I think the thing that feels the most convoluted to me out of all this is that it took the entirety of this movie happening before anybody had the idea to be like, hey, like Lilo should probably stay with this caregiver that's been in their life this entire time and let Nani kind of like get control because she's also like a kid. And like, and we'll just like, or even like, why doesn't the neighbor also be in charge of like Nani? Like, because like Nani's also a kid. Like, it's weird that we needed the whole movie to happen and they needed to struggle in this manner just for it to be like, hey, yeah, like maybe the neighbor should take care of them. Like, I feel like that's something like maybe we should have got to a lot sooner, like way before Stitch ever showed up. Is that like, hey, maybe she should have got involved in like taking care of these kids? Like that seemed like probably the most appropriate matter to happen. But listen, movie's got to happen. Movie's got a movie. We need a plot to happen. So like again, a little bit of a nitpick, but that's something that like I noticed. And I was like, yeah, that might have been something that could have happened. But for the overall, it's an enjoyable movie. Is it going to win any awards? Is it going to change like the culture of cinema? Like no, but it's a good movie. It's an enjoyable movie. You're not going to feel like you wasted your time if you went and saw it. Like you got some kids that need to be entertained. Like this is a good movie to take them to. They will enjoy it. It's fun. They will have a good time. And movies like this, regardless of like what people are saying, are good for the cinema. This was a good win for the cinema. Like it was a good movie. It did absolutely bonkers money. Like the question will be where we're going forward from here because we're probably going to get some sequels. They'll probably try and do like some of the other animated ones or like if like I got no problem if they do sequels, but if they're going to do sequels, I would hope that they would just like create their own one and not try to do any of the animated sequels that they've already done with Stitch. Like just take it in new directions. I would rather them see them do that than to try and continue to just copy like some of the animated stuff. So I think that could be an interesting route if they did that and came up with a wholly original story. That I could be interested in. I don't know that I want to see them continue to try and adapt the animated stuff that they've done. But overall, fun kids movie. I give this one solid, right down the middle of the line, a 3 out of 5. Good, enjoyable time at the theater. And that's going to do it for us here on Lilo and Stitch. Go check out, form these own opinions for yourself. Check out these movies for yourself as always. And as always, we'll see you at the movies.